Keith Tanner here from Flyin Miata, and today we're going to talk about alternative uses for your Miata. Sort of. It's wintertime, you can't do your usual Miata stuff. What can you do with it? So we're going to talk about that in a moment. A couple of pieces of business first. For those of you who are watching this live and are incensed by the fact that it's being filmed vertically, we are also filming a 4K version that's horizontal. We will be releasing that in a couple of days. Don't worry, all the same content, but you will be able to watch on your widescreen TV at home if that is necessary. Also, if you like the flannel I'm wearing, we are currently in the ordering period for this year's flannel. It's a red and black instead of the blue and black, but the order window for that is open right now. This is for the live viewers only on the Flyin Miata website. So this has become sort of the de facto winter uniform around Flyin Miata. They're very comfortable, highly recommend it. Okay, so before I get started, if you do enjoy this sort of content, don't forget to like our channel, to subscribe to our channel, and go ahead and comment on any of the videos as well, because the more you comment, especially live, the more we can use that to steer what we're talking about. We can answer your questions, and we do read every single comment that is posted on our videos, whether it's today or whether it's sometime in the future. So we love the interaction. If you have questions, throw them in the comments. If you have feedback, throw them in the comments. Whatever. Pictures of your cat, throw them in the comments. We're all good here. So today we're going to talk about, well, winter use of your Miata. Miatas are little tiny sports cars. They're lightweight, they're rear-wheel drive. They can be used in the wintertime. I have daily driven a Miata as my only car in the winter in the past. There are still people doing it today, but we're not here to talk about day-to-day driving stuff here. Today I'm going to talk about ice racing. It's an alternative way to have a lot of fun with your Miata. It's ridiculously entertaining. It's low risk, low speed, and I'd highly recommend if you live in a place that has ice racing, check it out. We're going to talk today a little bit about what's involved in ice racing, setting a car up for it, what you can expect, that sort of thing. And of course, if you have questions, please do throw them in there. So, we know Miatas are great at autocross. Dodging around cones in a parking lot, lots of grip, sunny days, shagging cones all over the place. It's a lot of fun. Over the last few years, we've seen a big rise in rallycross as well. I say last few years, it's probably been the last decade, but it's not been around as long as autocross has. And rallycross is basically autocross on dirt, roughly speaking. There is the European version of rallycross, which is mixed surface. We're going to be talking about the American SCCA sort of NASA version of it, which is running around some poor sucker's field, making a mess. So ice racing, the kind that I encourage you to try, is basically the same thing. We could call it ice cross. I don't know if anybody does call it ice cross, but let's just call it ice cross for the purpose of this video. Going out on a prepared track covered in snow or ice and just having a good time. Sometimes it's done on frozen lakes. There's a number of places in Colorado, for example, that have either permanent tracks set up, or in Georgetown they set up a temporary track on an ice fishing lake. We have had our local go-kart track here host ice days or snow days because there was snow all over the ice, so they gave it a quick plow, just enough to get rid of the powder. And then we went out there and had a great time in everything from Lotus 7 replicas to Ford Raptors. It's just a great way to have low consequence fun with a Miata. So this is not a new thing. I actually remember an article a friend of mine wrote that was in the winter 1995 edition of Miata magazine, which if you have that's in your home library, please go pick it up and we can follow along. This is my personal copy. If you don't, Richard wrote basically a 2-page article about his ice racing experiences with his, at the time, fairly new 1993 that he ice raced for, I think it was about 3 years. And he raced some other cars before that. He had an RX-7 that he used to ice race with. And he's a rally co-driver and lives up in Edmonton, so of course he's comfortable with the concept of sliding around on snow and on whatever. And so I actually called up my friend Richard yesterday. We chatted for a while, and a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is things that I learned about from Richard. So thank you very much, Richard, for that. And I apologize, all errors are my own. So there are multiple styles of ice racing. There's the wheel-to-wheel style, which is pretty popular in Europe. You've probably seen the Top Gear guys have been to ice race things, or Top Gear or Grand Tour, I forget which one it was. The sort we see around here tends to be more time attack style. It's more like a rallycross, more like an autocross, where you send out one car at a time or far enough apart that you're not going wheel to wheel, and it's just you against the clock. And it's a great way to just get rid of the winter blahs when you're goofing around. Mazda understands it. Back in 2016, they did an ice academy. They actually invited a bunch of journalists to a specially prepared area up near Crested Butte, Colorado, and they were showing off CX-5s and CX-3s and messing them around. But they also set up an autocross course and had a bunch of NDs there because of course you do. When asked why they did it, I think Dave Coleman said, because we're a fun company and autocrossing Miatas on ice is a fun thing to do. And that was their justification. So the Flyin Miata crew actually managed to get invited to that. So we actually got a chance to go ice racing in Mazda's own NDs with Blizzak tires on a beautiful snowy track under blue skies at their expense. It was a fantastic day. I highly recommend it. Mazda, please do that again and do it nearby because we had a very good time. So let's talk about the prep a little bit first. Do we have any questions over there, guys? No questions. All right. I'm going to talk a little bit about the prep because, hey, you know, we're a performance parts company. Prepping cars for stuff is a lot of what we do. We're not going to be able to sell you a lot of parts for this here, but I'm going to go through it. The biggest thing is going to be tires. This is a good snow tire. This is actually a Hakkapeliitta. This would be a good tire to run if you're not running studs. And one thing about studs is that if you are ice racing, they may put you in a different class. So you might want to choose if you're going to do a rubber class or a studded class. Also, there may be rules locally where you live as to whether you can actually run studs. But this is a good snow tire, and one of the things you can do to tell that it's a good snow tire is it's got all these little sipes, these little grooves in here. Those are designed to actually grab and trap snow because snow on snow traction is superior to snow on rubber traction, so it actually basically gives the tire a covering of snow. It's the exact opposite of a mud tire. That's why this is designed to get rid of water, but it doesn't have the big voids you expect to see in a mud tire to get rid of the snow. It's designed almost to trap it. This is an all-season tire that would be frankly terrifying in the snow. Absolutely no sipes. It's not going to trap anything there at all. It doesn't have a lot of tread blocks even to dig in anything. Yeah, cannot recommend. You would be able to have fun at a much slower speed with that, shall we say. And there's also, of course, I don't want to say new because they've been around for 20 years, but the Blizzak style of gumballs, ice gumballs, are a great way to actually get physical traction on ice. Maybe not so much on snow, but they will actually stick on ice better. They have a shorter tread life, or a shorter rubber life, because that is the nature of gumballs. But I'm sure if there are ice racers out there who are going, they've all got their favorite. Just like the 200 treadwear class, there's undoubtedly tire wars involved in snow tires as well. But generally speaking, look for sipes, look for a dedicated snow tire, and not just an all-season, because that would not be a fun day. Okay, now a couple of notes before I get into, say, suspension setup and things like that. A couple of notes about the actual driving style. And this is, you're on a low traction surface, and one where things happen slowly. So you want to be smooth. Smooth is always fast, isn't it? Even when you're autocrossing, people telling you smooth is fast, but you can be much more violent in autocross than you can on, say, ice racing. You've got to be smooth with your inputs. They've got to be gradual, they've got to be measured. You've got to basically not overwhelm the traction because, as you may recall from high school physics, the coefficient of static friction is higher than the coefficient of sliding friction, which basically means that once you break free, you're going to have a harder time getting it back. You have less grip than you did before you break free. So you want to make sure that you don't overwhelm your tires, don't overwhelm the chassis with very, very rapid movements. You want to make sure you're nice and smooth, feed into the corners, don't upset the car. You'll also find if you are racing on something like the Georgetown Lake, which is an ice lake that is plowed, if you're running in the rubber class like this, you want to make sure that you've got better traction on snow than you do on the ice itself. So if you can stay what might seem like offline and actually get into the rougher, the snow itself, you will actually have more traction than if you try to run the normal racing line if it's been polished clean. So your lines might be a little bit different. Your cornering speeds are not going to be great. Your braking might be better, so you'll probably end up wanting to do a later apex so that you can take advantage of braking a little bit later, accelerating a little bit earlier, emphasizing getting off the corner Um, that will do better than trying to maintain a lot of speed through the corner, if that makes sense. So for car setup, again, it's a little closer, at this point, it's a little closer to rallycross. You don't want the car too stiff. You want it to be able to move around to really load up those outside tires. It'll help you be smooth too. If your car is set up to be very, very nervous on the street, it's not going to be a comfortable car to drive on ice with. Richard told me a story about some guys who showed up with a spec Miata setup on ice, and he said it was the slowest thing out there. The Chevettes were blowing its doors off. This was back in 1993, so Chevettes were more of a thing than they are now. But even then, getting your doors blown off by a Chevette, got to be embarrassing. So you want something that is not too stiff. You want a compliant suspension, and you want a long travel suspension. Now, Richard's experience is based on his own ice racing arena, which involved a lot of running with, the course was used by cars with studs, and they were allowed to use fairly significant bolts, as he called them, on the tires, so they would really chew up the ice. He said in a weekend they could go through 12 inches of ice. So the ruts were enormous in his particular setup. So for them, you know, ice is not as smooth as you think. Very rarely does it look like a hockey rink, because there's no Zambonis out there preparing an ice racing course. So you're going to find that the surface is much rougher than you expect it to be. Again, more like rallycross. So you need to have the travel, you need to have the compliance to be able to deal with it. You also need to have a ride height so you don't choke up the nose of the car with snow, and you can deal with ruts, you can deal with clumps of snow, that sort of thing, so you don't get yourself high-centered. So you want a car that's tall, you want a car that is compliant and fairly soft and can basically float across the surface. That's the way that Richard described it, is letting the car float across the surface, let the wheels do their thing. Honestly, I find that sort of setup works on cracks too, because then you can really hammer curbs and stuff like this, but that's an aside. You also don't want to run super fat tires. I mean, this car is currently sitting on a set of 215s. This is not being set up purely for ice racing, of course. This is a street car, but even then, this car runs 245s in the summertime. It runs 215 now. If it was trying to ice race and do even better, it would probably run something like a 195. You go even skinnier. You want a skinny tire, partly to make sure that your traction is biased towards the longitudinal for braking and acceleration, and also to cut through the soft surface and get down to the grip that's underneath. So skinny tires, tall, it's all the opposite stuff from motocross, isn't it? Skinny, tall, soft. It's different, but hey, it's a different way to have fun with your car. You'll probably want to run lower tire pressures as well to help the tire conform to the surface. That's going to be surface dependent to some extent. I suspect that on some of the icier setups, the smoother, icier setups, maybe not so much. When we had the ice day at our local go-kart track at Grand Junction Motor Speedway, it was a very smooth track, so we didn't need that sort of compliance. It all depends on what you're going to be using for a surface. More setup stuff. Richard recommended less camber on the wheels. You want the tire flat on the surface because that improves your braking capability. Richard was all about the braking with his stuff. You want to have the tire as close as possible as flat. You're also not going to roll as much, so you're not getting as much active camber out of the thing. But yeah, fairly flat tires to make sure that it's straight up and down, to make sure you've got as much surface area on the track as possible. If you have a lot of camber, if you're running around with an autocross alignment with 3 degrees, 4 degrees of camber, you're only using half the tire for your acceleration and braking. It's less of a problem on asphalt than it is on a low traction situation like ice or like snow. He also said to run soft sway bars, and that's to let the car, I'm having a little trouble with the physics on this one personally, but let the car load up those outside tires and let them dig in more. I think it was more to get the car to roll and get the chassis actually working, but he did recommend soft sway bars, otherwise the car it didn't wake up the chassis enough. I can't read my last note on there. The surfaces that Richard used to race on ranged from ice to packed powder. You will do, of course, like every kind of motorsport, you will fine-tune your car to the surface you're going to run on. The surface varies much more in this than it will in autocross, of course, but it is going to be closer to rallycross in that regard. Do we have anything over there? Anything over there, guys? Okay. Because the speeds are slow, the consequences of something happening are fairly low. If you do hit something, it's probably going to be a snowbank. Might want to check out to see how soft and fluffy they are before you go out there and slide into a snowbank. Definitely start off slow, bring the speed up. Don't just go into the first corner hot, turn the wheel, and just plow straight off the road into the snowbank to find out how hard they are. There are easier ways. It's unlikely you're going to be able to roll the car. If you do, it'll be in soft powder, hopefully. At least it won't be over rocks and that sort of thing. The regulations for things like roll bars are going to depend on the local authority. I know that when we did it at our local setup, they didn't care. There's an ice track that runs near us, you know, an hour or so up the interstate. I don't believe they require roll protection as well because, again, all you're supposed to do is slide off into the powder on that particular setup. A more established environment where they have a sort of dedicated ice track that has permanent snowbanks that become hard over the course of the winter, they may have different rules. As always, check with the authorities before you make a decision and prep your car. The pictures in the Miata magazine article are hilarious because they show Richard running around with the top off just because, you know, because you can. Remember, he's from Northern Canada, so he's a robust individual. He can drive around in the snow with the top down and survive. Why not? We've all done it. If you haven't, you should. It's fun. So that's about all I've got to talk about ice racing. I would love to give you a live demo, but unfortunately, we don't have any snow in the parking lot here. The snow is up on top of the 12,000-foot flat top mountain on the edge of town. We didn't have cell service up there, so I can't give you a live demo. Maybe someday we'll shoot you live from the ice track around here, but I hope this opens your eyes to a potential other place to go play with your car. I hope it keeps you from getting scared for taking your Miata out in the snow. They are fun little snow machines. They act exactly like they do on pavement, just slower. But you will find that their very quick reflexes can be quite a lot of fun in the snow, and they love to slide. There's a reason that drifters are starting to pay attention to Miatas instead of just 240SXs and stuff like that. I apologize for not using all the cool chassis codes, but I don't speak Nissan. They're quick, they're responsive, they're fun to play with, and you might as well play with them every chance you get. Don't just hide them away for the winter. Take them out and have some fun. So hopefully that gives you an idea. In the meantime, throw any questions or comments or pictures of cats or pictures of Miatas on ice courses in the comments. And if you have ideas for new videos that you want to see, whatever. Let's just have fun in the comments. In the meantime, my name's Keith Tanner. Thanks for paying attention.